3 weeks before our wedding, my fiancé Marcus looked me straight in the eyes and said the words that shattered everything I believed about our relationship. We were discussing final venue arrangements when he suddenly stopped mid-sentence and stared at me with this cold expression I had never seen before. "Emily," he said slowly, "I think you need a real man. I just realized I am way out of your league." The smirk that followed those words was pure cruelty. His best friend had been filling his head with ideas about settling, and apparently Marcus finally agreed. Before I tell you how I turned this devastating betrayal into the best decision of my life, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe, because you will not believe how this story ends and how karma delivered the most perfect justice. Marcus and I had been together for 4 years when he proposed. We met during our senior year at Oregon State University, where he was studying business and I was finishing my degree in environmental science. Our relationship felt like a perfect partnership from the very beginning. We shared similar values about family career ambitions and building a life together. Marcus was charming, intelligent, and had this infectious enthusiasm for his future plans that made me excited to be part of his journey. After graduation, we both found good jobs in Portland and moved in together. Marcus landed a position at a mid-level consulting firm that specialized in helping small businesses improve their operations and profitability. His starting salary was decent, and he was optimistic about advancement opportunities within the company. I was hired by an environmental consulting company that worked with corporations to develop sustainable business practices. My job involved conducting environmental impact assessments and helping companies reduce their carbon footprints while maintaining profitability. Our life together felt stable and promising. We lived in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment in Southeast Portland, adopted a rescue dog named Charlie, and spent our weekends exploring hiking trails, trying new restaurants, and visiting farmers markets. Marcus was supportive of my career goals and seemed genuinely proud of my work in environmental consulting. When I received recognition for a major project that helped a manufacturing company reduce their waste output by 40%, Marcus celebrated with me and told everyone about my achievement. The proposal came on our 3-year anniversary during a weekend trip to the Oregon coast. Marcus had planned a romantic dinner at a beachfront restaurant, and afterward, we walked along the shore under a sky full of stars. When he dropped to one knee and pulled out the ring, I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. The ring was beautiful, but modest, which I appreciated because it showed he had been thoughtful about our budget and practical about our financial goals. His proposal speech was heartfelt and genuine, focusing on how much he loved building a life with me and how excited he was about our future together. Wedding planning was initially fun and collaborative. We chose a venue that reflected both our personalities, an outdoor ceremony at a botanical garden, followed by a reception in a rustic barn that had been converted into an event space. The setting was beautiful without being extravagant, and the cost was reasonable enough that we could pay for most of it ourselves without going into significant debt. We wanted our wedding to reflect our values about sustainability and community, so we planned to use local vendors' seasonal flowers and minimal waste decoration. Marcus seemed engaged and enthusiastic during the early stages of planning. He had opinions about the menu, helped research photographers, and even suggested some creative ideas for incorporating our love of nature into the ceremony. We spent evenings looking at venue options, tasting food from different caterers, and discussing how we wanted the day to flow. These conversations felt like extensions of all the other planning we had done as a couple, from choosing our apartment to deciding how to split household responsibilities. However, as the wedding date approached and the planning became more detailed, I started noticing changes in Marcus's behavior and attitude. He became less interested in making decisions about centerpieces, music selection, and other details that required time and attention. When I would bring up items that needed his input, he would often say things like, "Whatever you think is best," or "I trust your judgment," rather than engaging with the actual choices we needed to make together. More concerning was how Marcus started making comments about other couples we knew and their relationship dynamics. When his coworker announced his engagement to a woman who worked in marketing at a tech company, Marcus made several observations about how impressive she was and how lucky his coworker was to be with someone so accomplished. When we attended the wedding of one of my college friends, Marcus spent the entire reception talking about how beautiful the bride was and how successful her new husband's law practice had become. These comments felt different from normal observations about people we knew. There was an undertone of comparison and evaluation that made me uncomfortable. When I mentioned feeling bothered by his focus on other people's achievements and appearances, Marcus dismissed my concerns as oversensitivity. He said he was just making conversation and that I was reading too much into casual comments. But the pattern continued, and I found myself feeling increasingly insecure about how Marcus viewed me compared to other women in our social circle. The situation became more troubling when Marcus started spending more time with his college roommate Trevor, who had moved to Portland 6 months earlier for a job in finance. Trevor was single, drove an expensive sports car, and had a lifestyle that revolved around dating multiple women and spending money on luxury experiences. Marcus began joining Trevor for expensive dinners, exclusive events, and weekend trips to places like wine country and Las Vegas that were far outside our normal budget and social activities. The change in Marcus became undeniable after he started hanging out with Trevor regularly. Every conversation seemed to circle back to Trevor's lifestyle, Trevor's dating stories, or Trevor's opinions about relationships and success. Marcus would come home from their outings with a different energy, almost like he was evaluating our life together against some new standard that I was not measuring up to. Trevor had very specific ideas about what constituted an impressive woman, and unfortunately, I did not fit his criteria. According to the stories Marcus shared, Trevor believed that successful men should be with women who were not only beautiful, but also wealthy, well-connected, and able to enhance their partner's social and professional status. Environmental consulting apparently was not glamorous enough to meet these standards. My modest salary, practical wardrobe, and preference for outdoor activities over fancy social events were evidence that Marcus was settling for someone beneath his potential. The most hurtful part was watching Marcus begin to adopt Trevor's perspective without seeming to realize how it was affecting his view of me and our relationship. He started making comments about my appearance that had never been an issue before. He suggested I should consider updating my wardrobe to be more professional and sophisticated. When I mentioned that I was happy with my style and that my current clothes were appropriate for my work and lifestyle, Marcus said I was being defensive and closed-minded about improvement. Marcus also began questioning my career choices and financial contributions to our relationship. Even though we had always split expenses fairly based on our respective incomes, he started suggesting that I should be more ambitious about advancement and salary increases. He pointed out that some of his coworkers' girlfriends and wives had higher-paying jobs in fields like technology, finance, and law. The implication was clear: he was starting to see my career as inadequate compared to what he thought he deserved in a partner. Our wedding planning sessions became increasingly tense as Marcus displayed less enthusiasm for the choices we had made together. He started second-guessing decisions about the venue, questioning whether our budget was too limited, and suggesting that we should postpone the wedding to save money for a more impressive celebration. When I reminded him that we had chosen our approach because it reflected our values and financial priorities, he accused me of being inflexible and unwilling to consider his evolving perspective. The breaking point came 3 weeks before our wedding date. Marcus had spent the previous weekend with Trevor in Seattle, attending some kind of networking event that was supposedly important for his career development. When he returned on Sunday evening, something fundamental had changed in his demeanor toward me. He was distant during dinner and seemed to be evaluating everything about our apartment, our plans, and our relationship with fresh eyes that found everything lacking. The next evening, we were sitting at our kitchen table, reviewing the final details for our wedding reception. I was showing Marcus the confirmed headcount and discussing timeline details with our coordinator when he suddenly stopped responding to my questions. He was staring at me with this expression I had never seen before, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time and did not like what he discovered. "Emily," he said in this cold, detached voice that sent chills down my spine, I think you need a real man. I just realized I am way out of your league." The words hit me like a physical blow. He continued with this cruel smirk spreading across his face. "Trevor helped me understand that I have been settling for someone who cannot match my potential. You are a nice person, but you are not the kind of woman a successful man should marry." I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process what I was hearing. This was the man who had proposed to me, who had spent 4 years building a life with me, who had celebrated my achievements and supported my goals. Yet here he was, 3 weeks before our wedding, telling me that I was not good enough for him and that our entire relationship had been him settling for less than he deserved. Marcus continued his devastating monologue, explaining that he had come to realize that marriage should be a strategic partnership that enhanced both people's social and professional standing. According to his new perspective, I did not bring enough value to the relationship to justify his commitment. My career was not prestigious enough, my social connections were not valuable enough, and my appearance was not striking enough to make him proud to be seen with me at important events. The cruelty of his words was matched by the coldness of his delivery. This was not an emotional outburst or a moment of confusion. It was a calculated decision to end our relationship in the most hurtful way possible. Marcus had clearly rehearsed this conversation and chosen his words specifically to make me feel small, inadequate, and grateful that someone like him had ever paid attention to someone like me in the first place. In the immediate aftermath of Marcus's devastating declaration, I experienced a strange combination of heartbreak and clarity that I had never felt before. The pain of his rejection was overwhelming, but underneath that initial shock was a growing sense of anger and determination that surprised me with its intensity. As I listened to him explain why I was not good enough for his evolved standards, something shifted inside me that changed everything about how I saw our situation. I realized that Marcus was revealing something fundamental about his character that I had been blind to during our 4 years together. This was not really about my inadequacies or his superior league. It was about his willingness to discard someone who had loved and supported him the moment someone else convinced him he could do better. The man I thought I knew would never have spoken to anyone the way he was speaking to me, much less someone he claimed to love. Instead of begging him to reconsider or trying to argue against his assessment of my worth, I made a decision that would prove to be the best choice of my entire life. I stood up from the kitchen table, looked him directly in the eyes, and said with complete calm, "You are absolutely right, Marcus. I do need a real man. Thank you for showing me that you are not one." The shock on his face was immediate and satisfying. He had clearly expected me to be devastated to plead with him to give me another chance or to promise that I would change to meet his new standards. Instead, I was agreeing with him while simultaneously making it clear that he was the one who did not measure up to what I deserved in a partner. Over the next 48 hours, I took decisive action to end our relationship and cancel our wedding with an efficiency that impressed even me. I called our venue coordinator and explained that we were canceling the event. Because we were within the 3-week cancellation window, we would lose our deposit, but I did not care about the financial loss. The relief of not having to marry someone who saw me as beneath him was worth every penny we had invested in those plans. I contacted all our vendors individually to cancel their services. Our photographer was disappointed, but understanding, especially when I explained the circumstances. Our caterer was able to book another event for the same date, so they waived most of their cancellation fee. The florist kept the deposit, but offered to create a smaller arrangement for my apartment as a gesture of support, which I appreciated. Each phone call felt like removing another chain that had been holding me to a future I no longer wanted. The most challenging part was informing our family members and friends about the cancellation. I decided to be honest about the reason for our split rather than giving vague explanations about incompatibility or timing. When people heard that Marcus had told me I needed a real man and that he was out of my league, their reactions ranged from outrage on my behalf to relief that I had discovered his true character before the wedding. My sister told me she had always thought Marcus was too self-centered, and my best friend admitted she had been worried about his recent behavior changes. Marcus, meanwhile, seemed genuinely shocked by how quickly and decisively I was dismantling our shared life. He had apparently expected that calling off the wedding would lead to a period of relationship negotiation where he could set new terms for our partnership. Instead, I was treating his declaration as a final decision and acting accordingly. When he tried to suggest that we could work through our issues or take a break to reassess our compatibility, I made it clear that there was nothing to work through. I found a new apartment within a week and arranged to move all my belongings while Marcus was at work. I left his ring on the kitchen table with a note that simply said, "Thank you for your honesty. I hope you find the woman you think you deserve." By the time he came home that evening, I was completely moved out and had blocked his phone number to avoid any attempts at further communication. The speed and completeness of my departure sent a clear message that I had taken his words at face value and moved on without looking back. Later, I learned from mutual friends that Marcus had been telling people he was not sure about his decision and that he thought we might be able to reconcile after some time apart. My decisive actions made it clear that there would be no reconciliation and that I was not interested in being someone's backup plan. 6 months after walking away from Marcus, I was living a completely transformed life that proved just how wrong he had been about my league and my worth. The apartment I found was in a vibrant neighborhood that I loved, filled with young professionals who appreciated the same outdoor lifestyle and environmental values that Marcus had grown to see as limitations. My new community included people who saw my career as important and impressive rather than inadequate. More significantly, my career took off in ways I had never anticipated. Within 3 months of my breakup, I was promoted to senior environmental consultant with a substantial salary increase and expanded responsibilities. My supervisor explained that they had been watching my work for a long time and were impressed by my innovative approaches to helping companies balance profitability with environmental responsibility. The promotion came with opportunities to travel, lead important projects, and build relationships with executives at major corporations. The confidence I gained from handling my breakup with such decisive action translated into professional boldness that served me well. I started proposing more ambitious projects and taking on leadership roles that challenged me to grow beyond my previous comfort zone. When a major technology company needed someone to oversee their transition to carbon-neutral operations, I submitted a comprehensive proposal that won the contract and established me as a rising expert in corporate environmental transformation. My personal life flourished as well. Without the constant underlying tension of feeling inadequate in my relationship, I rediscovered the joy of pursuing activities and friendships that brought me genuine happiness. I joined a hiking club that organized weekend trips to amazing locations throughout the Pacific Northwest. I started taking photography classes and discovered a talent for capturing natural landscapes that led to several opportunities to display my work in local galleries. Most importantly, I met someone who appreciated exactly the qualities that Marcus had decided were not good enough. David was a park ranger and environmental educator who shared my passion for conservation and outdoor adventures. He was impressed by my career achievements and saw my work as meaningful and valuable. When I told him about my previous relationship, he was genuinely shocked that anyone could view my accomplishments and interests as inadequate. David's response to learning about Marcus was both supportive and illuminating. He pointed out that environmental consulting was one of the most important and rapidly growing fields in the business world, and that my expertise was becoming increasingly valuable as more companies faced pressure to address climate change concerns. He helped me recognize that Marcus's dismissal of my career reflected his own narrow-mindedness rather than any real assessment of my professional worth. Meanwhile, I started hearing updates about Marcus's life through our former mutual friends, and the news was not good. His relationship with Trevor had apparently become toxic, as Trevor encouraged him to pursue women who were completely out of his league and showed no interest in someone with his modest income and unremarkable personality. Marcus spent months trying to date women who worked in high-paying fields like law and medicine, only to discover that successful, attractive women had many options and were not impressed by his consulting job or his BMW. The reality of dating in his 30s, without the support system of a loving partner, became clear to Marcus very quickly. The women Trevor introduced him to were looking for men who could offer them lifestyles and experiences that far exceeded what Marcus could provide. His attempts to project success and sophistication fell flat when these women realized he was not actually wealthy or particularly accomplished compared to their other options. More devastating for Marcus was the discovery that I had moved on successfully and was thriving without him. When mutual friends posted photos from events where David and I appeared happy and adventurous together, Marcus apparently became obsessed with tracking my progress and comparing his situation to my obvious happiness. Learning about my promotion and career success was particularly difficult for him to accept, as it contradicted his narrative about my limited potential. The most satisfying validation of my decision to walk away came exactly 1 year after Marcus had told me I needed a real man. I received a series of increasingly desperate text messages from him, despite the fact that I had blocked his number months earlier. He had apparently gotten a new phone specifically to contact me, which showed a level of determination that bordered on harassment. The messages revealed that Marcus's life had completely fallen apart in the year since our breakup. Trevor had moved to San Francisco for a new job, leaving Marcus without his enabler and bad influence. The expensive lifestyle Marcus had been trying to maintain to impress potential dates had left him in significant debt. Most importantly, he had finally realized that he had destroyed the best relationship he was likely ever to have based on superficial advice from someone who did not understand what really mattered in life. His texts were filled with apologies, regrets, and desperate pleas for me to consider giving him another chance. He acknowledged that he had been foolish to listen to Trevor's opinions about relationships, and that he now understood how valuable and irreplaceable I had been. He claimed to have learned from his mistakes and promised that he would never again take me for granted or question my worth as a partner. The most pathetic part of his messages was his detailed description of how empty his life had become without me. He was living alone in the same apartment we had shared, surrounded by reminders of our relationship, and unable to find anyone who connected with him the way I had. His attempts to date women who met Trevor's standards had been humiliating failures that left him feeling rejected and inadequate. He now realized that I had been perfect for him and that his search for someone better had been based on completely wrong priorities. I did not respond to his messages, but I did share them with David, who found the whole situation both sad and amusing. David pointed out that Marcus's year of misery was exactly what he deserved for treating someone who loved him so cruelly. More importantly, David helped me recognize how much stronger and more confident I had become through the process of rebuilding my life independently. The contrast between my life and Marcus's situation was stark and telling. While he was struggling with debt, loneliness, and regret, I was thriving professionally and personally. My relationship with David was built on mutual respect and appreciation rather than constant evaluation and comparison. My career had reached new heights that exceeded anything I had imagined while I was with Marcus. Most importantly, I had discovered my own resilience and capacity for creating the life I actually wanted, rather than settling for someone else's limited vision of my potential. When Marcus's messages continued for several weeks, I finally responded with a brief text that ended our communication permanently. I thanked him for showing me that I deserved better than someone who would discard me based on another person's shallow opinions. I told him that his year of consequences had taught him exactly what he needed to know about the value of what he had thrown away. I wished him well, but made it clear that I had no interest in revisiting a relationship with someone who had proven himself capable of such cruelty. The last thing I learned about Marcus came from a mutual friend who mentioned that he had moved back home with his parents to recover from his financial difficulties and emotional breakdown. Trevor, the friend who had encouraged him to leave me, had apparently cut contact when Marcus became too needy and dependent. Marcus was starting over at 32 years old, with no relationship, no financial stability, and no prospect of finding someone who would love him the way I had. This information did not bring me any satisfaction or sense of revenge. Instead, it confirmed that I had made the right choice in walking away completely rather than trying to rehabilitate someone who had shown such poor judgment about what really mattered in life. Marcus had received exactly the education he needed about the consequences of treating people as disposable based on superficial assessments of their worth. Today, 3 years later, I am engaged to David and planning a wedding that reflects our shared values and genuine excitement about building a life together. My career continues to flourish as companies increasingly recognize the importance of environmental sustainability. Most importantly, I learned that the right person will see you as exactly what they have been looking for, rather than someone they need to settle for or upgrade from. The experience with Marcus taught me that when someone tells you they think you are not good enough for them, you should believe them and walk away immediately. People who truly love you would never speak to you the way Marcus spoke to me, regardless of what their friends might be telling them. Real love involves protecting your partner's feelings and building them up rather than tearing them down based on outside opinions. Have you ever been in a relationship where your partner made you feel like you were not good enough for them? How did you handle the situation, and what did you learn about your own worth? Share your experiences in the comments below, because your story might help someone else recognize red flags in their own relationship. Please like this video if my story helped you understand the importance of walking away from people who do not appreciate your value. Subscribe for more real stories about finding your strength and building the life you deserve. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they are worth more than someone who sees them as settling. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that the right person will never make you feel like you need to prove your worth or compete for their appreciation.